The stars were dying, and Kale knew it was his fault. He sat alone in the communications center of the Vallani flagship, watching the red dots on his screen disappear one by one. Each dot was a world. Each world had billions of his people. The machines, called Devourers, had eaten 40% of the Vallani Empire in just 6 months. Kale's hands shook as he typed another message to the Galactic Federation. "Please send help. We are losing everything." The reply came back in minutes. Always the same words. "The Federation Council is considering your request." They had been considering for 3 months while his people died. The door opened behind him. Thera, the Council Prime, walked in. Her blue skin looked pale, and her large eyes showed the fear they all felt. "Any word from the Federation?" she asked. "The same," Kyle said. "They are still thinking about it." Thera closed her eyes. "The Devourers will reach our homeworld in 2 weeks. After that—" She didn't finish. They both knew what happened to worlds the machines visited. Nothing lived. Nothing remained except empty space where planets used to be. "There might be another way," Kyle said quietly. Thera opened her eyes. "What way?" Kyle turned to his computer. His fingers moved across the keys, bringing up a file marked with red warnings. "The Forbidden Signals Database. Communications from worlds the Federation will not contact." "The Death Worlds," Thera whispered. Everyone knew about Death Worlds. Planets so dangerous that they created savage, violent species. The Federation had made it illegal to contact them. They were too dangerous, too warlike. They would destroy galactic peace. "There is one," Kale said. "A world called Terra. They call themselves humans. The Federation says they are the most dangerous species in known space." Thera stared at the screen. The file showed pictures of humans fighting in massive wars. They fought with weapons that could destroy cities. They fought each other for thousands of years. They never stopped fighting. "They will kill us," Thera said. "The Devourers are already killing us," Kyle replied. "At least humans are alive. The machines just eat everything." Another alarm rang through the ship. More red dots disappeared from Kale's screen. Another world gone. Another billion Vallani dead. Thera looked at the human file for a long time. "Do it," she finally said. Kale's hands moved quickly across his controls. He had never sent a message to a forbidden world before. The Federation would punish them if they found out. But there would be no Federation left to punish anyone if the Devourers kept winning. He found the frequency that reached Terra. The signal would take 3 days to get there, if the humans answered at all. Kale typed his message in simple galactic common language. He hoped the humans could understand it. "We are the Vallani people. We are dying. Machines called Devourers are eating our worlds. Please help us. We have nowhere else to turn." He sent the message into space and waited. Far away, on a blue world orbiting a yellow star, the message reached Earth. Hyunwoo was working the night shift at the Deep Space Communications Center. He liked the quiet night hours when most humans were sleeping. It let him listen to the stars without interruption. His computer made a sound he had never heard before. The signal was coming from outside known human space. Way outside. Hyunwoo sat up straight and started recording. The message was in Galactic Common. Humans had learned this language from alien radio signals, but they had never received a direct message before. The voice sounded scared, desperate. Hyunwoo played the message 3 times to make sure he understood. Aliens were asking humans for help. Real aliens, not just radio signals from far away. He called his supervisor, then his supervisor's supervisor. Within an hour, Admiral Bo-Ram was standing in the communications center, listening to the alien message. Bo-Ram was a small woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She had fought in the Mars Wars and the asteroid conflicts. She did not trust easily. "Play it again," she said. Hyunwoo played the message. Admiral Bo-Ram listened with her arms crossed. "It could be a trap," she said. "Aliens trying to find our location." Captain Tae-ho spoke up from the back of the room. He was younger than the Admiral, with kind eyes and quick hands. "Ma'am, that sounds like real fear to me. You can't fake terror like that." "Since when are you an expert on alien emotions?" Bo-Ram asked. Since never, Tejo admitted. But I know what desperation sounds like. I've heard it in human voices, during battles. This alien sounds the same way. Boram played the message one more time. The alien voice spoke the same words, but she heard something different now. Not a trap, a prayer. Send it to the Earth Council, she ordered. This is too big for the military to decide alone. The Earth Council met in emergency session 12 hours later. President Yunji sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by representatives from every nation and colony. The alien message played through speakers in the center of the room. This is First Contact, said Dr. Kim from the Science Ministry. We have protocols for this situation. Our protocols assume peaceful contact, replied General Park from Defense. Not aliens asking us to fight their wars. Maybe that's exactly what we should do, said Director Yoon from Colonial Affairs. Fight their wars. Show the galaxy what humans can do. Or get ourselves killed fighting alien machines, General Park shot back. President Yoon-ji listened to the arguments for 2 hours. Military leaders wanted to ignore the message. Scientists wanted to study it. Politicians wanted to debate it for months. Finally, she held up her hand for silence. I want to hear the message one more time, she said. The room fell quiet. The alien voice filled the space again. We are dying. Please help us. We have nowhere else to turn. President Yoon-ji stood up slowly. When I was a child, she said, my grandmother told me stories about the old wars on Earth. She said the worst thing wasn't the fighting. It was when people heard cries for help and did nothing. She looked around the table at each face. These aliens are asking for help. They're dying. And they called us because we're their last hope. If we ignore them, what does that make us? Alive, General Park said quietly. Maybe, President Yoon-ji replied. But what kind of alive? The kind that lets others die while we watch? She pressed a button on the table. Admiral Boram, are you listening? Yes, Madam President, came the Admiral's voice from the speakers. How long would it take to prepare a response fleet? There was a pause. 72 hours for a full battle. Group. Maybe 48 if we skip some safety checks. Do it, President Yoon-ji said. 72 hours, full battle group. And Admiral? Yes, ma'am. Make it the biggest fleet we've ever sent anywhere. If we're going to answer their call for help, let's make sure we can actually help them. Back in Volani space, Kyle waited by his radio. 3 days had passed since he sent the message to Terra. Maybe the humans hadn't received it. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they were planning to invade Volani space instead of helping. His computer made a sound, an incoming message from the direction of Terra. Kale's hands shook as he opened the communication. The voice was human, speaking slow galactic common with a strange accent. Volani people, this is Admiral Boram of the Earth Defense Force. We received your message. We are coming to help. Hold on. Kale stared at the screen. The humans had answered. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was coming to help them fight the machines. He thought about the human war pictures in the Federation files. All that violence and destruction now pointed at the Devourers instead of other humans. For the first time in months, Kale smiled. The monsters were coming to save them. Earth had never moved so fast. Admiral Boram stood on the bridge of the EDF Indomitable, watching hundreds of ships gather in the space around Luna. 72 hours ago, most of these ships had been scattered across the solar system. Now they formed the largest human fleet in history. Final count, Admiral, reported Commander Hyun-woo. 500 warships, 50,000 Marines, and enough firepower to crack a moon. Boram nodded. It was an impressive fleet, but she wondered if it would be enough. The alien's message had mentioned machines that ate entire worlds. How do you fight something like that? Any word from our xenobiology team? She asked. Dr. Min Seo is on her way up, Hyun-woo replied. The bridge doors opened, and a young woman in a science uniform walked in. Dr. Min Seo looked nervous. She had studied alien life for years, but always from radio signals and long-distance observations. She had never expected to actually meet any aliens. What do we know about these Volani? Boram asked. Min Seo pulled up a holographic display. Based on their transmissions, they're a peaceful species. They've never shown aggressive behavior. In any Federation communications we've intercepted, they seem to prefer negotiation over conflict. And these devourers? Min Sio's expression grew dark. From what we can tell, they're artificial intelligences in machine bodies. They've consumed 40% of Vellani space in 6 months. That's faster than any invasion in recorded galactic history. Boram studied the display. Recommendations? Don't underestimate them, Min Sio said. Any machine intelligence that can move this fast and destroy this much has capabilities we can't imagine. Down in the engineering section, Junho was loading the last of the experimental weapons. These were prototypes that had never been tested in real combat. Plasma cannons that could cut through asteroids. Kinetic rounds that hit with the force of nuclear bombs. Electromagnetic pulse generators that could shut down entire cities. Are we sure these things won't blow up our own ships? Asked his assistant, a young engineer named Subin. Mostly sure, Junho replied. The simulations look good. Mostly sure isn't very comforting when we're talking about weapons that could vaporize us. Junho sealed the last weapons container. Nothing about this mission is comforting. We're flying into unknown space to fight machines that eat planets. At least our weapons give us a chance. Subin looked at the container labels. Half of these violate galactic treaties. Good thing we never signed those treaties, Junho said with a grin. In another part of the ship, Captain Tejo was briefing his fighter pilots. The hangar was filled with small, fast ships designed for hit-and-run attacks. Each pilot wore a suit that could keep them alive in space if their ship was destroyed. Listen up, Tejo said. We don't know what we're flying into. These devourers might have weapons we've never seen, ships bigger than anything we've built. But remember what makes us human. A young pilot named Jin Woo raised his hand. What's that, sir? We're too stupid to know when we're beaten, Tejo replied. Every other species in the galaxy thinks we're crazy for fighting the way we do. They think we take too many risks, sacrifice too much, push too hard. They're right. And that's why we're going to win. The pilots laughed nervously. They all knew the stories about human tactics in previous wars. Ramming attacks when ammunition ran out. Boarding enemy ships with nothing but knives and explosives. Fighting to the last person rather than surrender. Sir, asked another pilot, what if the aliens we're helping don't like our methods? Tejo thought about that for a moment. Then they'll learn to live with it. We're not going there to make friends. We're going there to kill machines. News of the fleet's departure spread quickly through Federation space. At a monitoring station, near the galactic rim, intelligence analyst Nira watched her screens with growing alarm. How many ships did you count? Asked her supervisor, an elderly Sethrak named Vel. 500, Nira replied. All armed with weapons we don't recognize. Energy readings are off the charts. Vel's scales turned pale. The Sethrak species had been part of the Federation for over 1,000 years. They had never seen a military force like this one. Send a message to the Council immediately, Vel ordered. Tell them the Deathworlders are mobilizing. A fleet this size could conquer half the galaxy. Should we try to intercept them? Vel looked at the energy readings again. Some of those human ships showed power signatures that matched Federation dreadnoughts, and the humans had 500 of them. No, he said. We watch, and we pray to whatever gods will listen that they're really going to help the Vellani. Back on the human flagship, Admiral Boram received reports from across the fleet. All ships were ready. All weapons were loaded. All Marines were prepared for deployment. She looked out at the stars and thought about the decision they had made. Humanity had spent centuries fighting each other over resources, territory, and ideology. Now they were about to fight alien machines over people they had never met. Admiral, Commander Yunwoo said, we're receiving another transmission from Vellani space. The message came through clearly. It was the same alien voice from before, but weaker now, more desperate. Human fleet. This is Kale of the Vellani Empire. The Devourers have accelerated their attack. They will reach our core worlds in 1 week, not 2. Please hurry, we are running out of time. Boram felt a chill run down her spine. The machines were moving faster than expected. At maximum speed, the human fleet would need 10 days to reach Vellani space. How much can we push the engines? She asked the chief engineer. We can cut 2 days off the trip, came the reply. But we'll arrive with half fuel and stress drive systems. Do it, Boram ordered. Signal all ships, maximum burn. We're racing against time. The human fleet accelerated toward alien space, pushing their ships harder than they had ever been pushed before. Behind them, Earth grew smaller until it was just another star. Ahead lay the unknown. In Volani space, Kyle monitored the approaching human fleet. Their ships moved faster than anything in Federation space. The energy signatures were unlike anything he had ever seen. Council Prime Thera stood beside him, watching the display. "Are we sure we made the right choice?" she asked. "Look at this," Kale said, pointing to his screen. "The human ships are pushing beyond safe limits to reach us faster. They're risking their own safety to save ours. Or they're rushing to conquer us while we're weak." Kale switched to another display. It showed Federation monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. All of them were tracking the human fleet with obvious fear. "The Federation is terrified," he said. 500 human warships with unknown weapons heading into Federation space. If the humans wanted to conquer us, they could take half the galaxy on their way here. Thera watched the human fleet markers moving steadily toward them. Then, "Why are they coming?" "Because we asked for help," Kale said simply. And somehow, the galaxy's most dangerous species decided to answer. On the human flagship, Dr. Minseo was studying everything the Federation knew about the Devourers. The more she learned, the more worried she became. The machines were not just mindless destroyers. They were intelligent, adaptive, and utterly ruthless. "Admiral," she reported to Boram, "I think we need to consider the possibility that we're flying into a trap." "How so?" "The Devourers have consumed 40% of an interstellar empire in 6 months. An empire that includes hundreds of worlds and billions of people. Then suddenly they slow down just as the Volani send a message to us. It's convenient timing." Boram nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. "You think the machines wanted the Volani to call us?" "I think the machines might be curious about us. We're the only major spacefaring species that isn't part of the Federation. The only ones they haven't had a chance to study. So they let the Volani live long enough to bring us to them." "It's possible," Minseo said, "but I don't think it matters. The Volani are still dying. Whether it's a trap or not, they need help." Boram looked out at the stars streaming past as the fleet raced through space. "Then we'll give them help. And if the machines want to study us, they'll learn something important." "What's that?" "Humans don't like being studied." The fleet continued toward Volani space, carrying 50,000 humans into the unknown. Behind them, the Federation watched with growing dread. Ahead, the Devourers waited in their mechanical patience, and somewhere between fear and hope, the Volani counted down the hours until the Deathworlders arrived. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Korith system, and Admiral Boram immediately knew they were too late. "Report," she ordered, staring at the tactical display. Commander Hyun-woo's voice was grim. "Massive battle in progress around the 4th planet. I count over 200 Devourer ships engaged with what's left of the Volani defense fleet." Boram watched the red and blue dots dancing across her screen. The blue dots representing Volani ships were disappearing faster than she could count them. The red dots just kept coming. Size comparison on the enemy ships? Their smallest vessels are twice the size of our destroyers. Their largest... Hyun-woo paused. "Ma'am, I'm reading a Devourer ship that's 40 kilometers long." The bridge fell, silent. The largest human ship was barely 2 kilometers from nose to tail. "Well," Boram said finally, "I guess we know why the Federation is afraid of them. Signal all ships, battle stations. We're going in." "Shouldn't we try to contact the Volani first?" asked Dr. Minseo. "Establish communication protocols?" Boram pointed at the screen where another Volani ship disappeared in a flash of light. "Doctor, I think the time for protocol is over. If we're going to save anyone, we need to do it now." She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Boram. We came here to help, and that's what we're going to do. Target the biggest enemy ships first. Show these machines what humans can do." Captain Tae-ho was already strapping himself into his fighter when the order came through. Around him, his pilots were doing the same. Their small ships looked fragile compared to the massive Devourer vessels on the long-range sensors. "Listen up," he called to his squadron. "Those machines think size matters. Let's show them they're wrong. Remember, Your training, fast attacks, hit and run, never stay in one place long enough for them to lock on. Jinwoo raised his hand. Sir, what about the size difference? Taeho grinned. What about it? David killed Goliath with a rock. We've got plasma cannons. The fighter bay doors opened, and the small human ships poured into space. They looked like insects next to the enormous Devourer vessels, but they moved with deadly purpose. On the surface of Korath Prime, the situation was desperate. Devourer ground forces had broken through the planetary defenses and were systematically harvesting the population. Marine Colonel Minho watched through his ship's sensors as massive machines processed living beings into raw materials. "Drop pods ready, Colonel," reported his aide, Lieutenant Seok Jin. Minho looked at his Marines. 50,000 humans against an entire planet full of hostile machines. The odds were terrible, but that had never stopped humans before. "Remember what we're fighting for," he told them. "Those are civilians down there. Families. Children. People who asked for our help. We don't let anyone down who trusts us." Though, drop pods launched toward the planet's surface like falling stars. In space, the human fleet engaged the Devourer ships with tactics that horrified both sides. Captain Taeho led his fighters in a kamikaze run against a Devourer dreadnought, using his ship's reactor as a makeshift bomb when his weapons ran out of ammunition. Engineer Jun Ho watched from the weapons control center as his experimental plasma cannons tore through Devourer hulls. The machine's armor, designed to withstand conventional energy weapons, melted like ice under the intense heat. "How are they not adapting?" asked Subin. "Their shields should be adjusting to our weapon frequencies." "They are adapting," Jun-Ho replied. "But we're not using any frequencies. Pure plasma doesn't have a frequency to adapt to." The Devourers tried to respond with logical tactics. They formed defensive formations, concentrated their fire, attempted to establish communication with the human ships, but human tactics made no sense to their artificial minds. When human ships ran out of ammunition, they rammed Devourer vessels. When their engines failed, they detonated their reactors. When all else failed, human crews would board enemy ships with nothing but small arms and explosives. In the Villani Command Center, Council Prime Thera watched the battle with growing amazement and horror. The humans fought with a savagery she had never imagined possible. They seemed to have no regard for their own survival. "Are they insane?" asked her military advisor, General Cass. "I don't think so," Thera replied. "I think they're just human." Kale, monitoring communications, picked up human radio chatter. The translation software struggled with their slang and expressions, but the emotion came through clearly. They were angry. Not at the Villani for calling them, but at the Devourers for threatening innocent people. "Listen to this," he said, playing a recording. A human voice, calm despite the sounds of battle in the background. "This is Sergeant Park to all units. I've got 20 Villani children trapped in Sector 7. Whatever it takes, we hold this position." On the planet's surface, Marine Private Dong-Woo was living those words. He had found a group of young Villani hiding in a damaged building while their parents fought elsewhere. The children were terrified, making sounds that didn't need translation. Dong-Woo set up his position at the building's entrance. His squad had moved on to other objectives, leaving him alone with his rifle and a handful of grenades. Through the smoke, he could see Devourer harvesting machines approaching. The machines were methodical, processing everything organic they encountered. Trees, grass, insects, people. It all went into their conversion furnaces to be turned into raw materials. Dong-Woo checked his ammunition. 30 rounds and 3 grenades. The approaching machines numbered in the hundreds. He activated his radio. "This is Private Dong-Woo. I've got civilian children at my position, requesting immediate support." The reply came back through static. "Support is 20 minutes out. Can you hold?" Dong-Woo looked at the children behind him, then at the approaching machines. "I'll hold." The first Devourer harvester rounded the corner, its mechanical arms reaching toward the building. Dong-Woo opened fire, his rifle bullets sparking off the machine's armor. The harvester paused, scanning for the source of resistance. More machines appeared. Dong-Woo threw his first grenade, taking out 2 of the smaller units. But there were too many. They kept coming, treating his resistance as a minor inconvenience. In the building behind him, the Villani children watched as this strange alien creature fought to protect them. They didn't understand his words, but they understood his actions. He was dying for them. Dongwu's ammunition ran out. He drew his sidearm and kept firing. When that was empty, he pulled out his combat knife and prepared for the machines to reach him. The lead harvester extended its processing arm toward him. Dongwu grabbed it and activated his last grenade, holding it against the machine's core systems. The explosion destroyed the harvester and damaged several others. Dongwu died in the blast, but the machines paused to analyze what had happened. A biological unit had destroyed itself to prevent their advance. It was illogical. That pause lasted just long enough for human reinforcements to arrive. 20 minutes later, Marine Captain Yun Su found the children alive and unharmed, protected by the body of a human they had never met. In space, the battle was turning in humanity's favor. The Devourer fleet, faced with tactics it couldn't comprehend, began to retreat. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something they couldn't process. Beings willing to die for others without any logical reason. Admiral Boram watched the enemy ships withdraw to the edge of the system. Her fleet had lost 30% of its ships, but they had saved Korath Prime. "Signal the Villani," she ordered. "Tell them the immediate threat is over." Dr. Minseo approached her station. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from the Villani command center. They want to thank us." "Put it through." The voice of Council Prime Thera filled the bridge. She spoke in careful galactic common, her words formal, but her emotion clear. "Human fleet, this is Thera of the Villani Council. We don't understand why you did this, why you sacrificed so much for people you've never met. But we will never forget. Never." Boram looked out at the stars where human and Villani ships floated together in space. "Tell them," she said, "that's what friends do." In the aftermath of the battle, as rescue ships searched for survivors and medics treated the wounded, something fundamental had changed. The galaxy's most feared species had revealed themselves to be something else entirely. They were protectors, and the Devourers, retreating to regroup and analyze what had happened, began to recalculate their understanding of biological life. These humans were not like other species. They were unpredictable, illogical, and extremely dangerous. But the machines had learned something important from the battle. Humans became most dangerous when they were protecting others. It was a lesson that would reshape the war to come. 3 days after the Battle of Korath Prime, Dr. Minseo stood in the first diplomatic meeting between humans and aliens in history. The setting was a damaged Villani station, hastily repaired after the Devourer attack. Around a circular table sat beings from 2 different worlds, trying to understand each other. Council Prime Thera spoke first, her translator converting her musical language into flat galactic common. "We must ask, why did your people come? Why did you risk so much? For strangers?" Minseo had been thinking about this question since they arrived. She looked around the table at the Villani delegation, their blue skin and large eyes showing genuine confusion. "May I tell you about Earth?" she asked. Thera nodded. "Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years," Minseo began. "Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Earthquakes that split continents. Diseases that killed half our population. Asteroids from space that wiped out entire species." She paused, watching the Villani faces. They looked horrified. Every few thousand years, something happened that should have made us extinct. But we didn't die. We adapted. We learned. We became stronger. Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about helping each other when everything goes wrong. Kyle, the communications officer who had first called Earth, leaned forward. "But we are not your people. We are aliens to you." "Yes," Minseo said simply. "But you asked for help. On Earth, when someone asks for help, you help them. It doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. That's how our species survived." In the communications center, Commander Hyunwoo was monitoring Federation response to the battle. The intercepted messages painted a clear picture: panic. Species across the galaxy were terrified that humans had left their home system. "Admiral," he reported to Boram, We're picking up emergency Federation Council sessions. They're debating whether to mobilize their fleet against us. Bo-Ram rubbed her tired eyes. Any word from Earth? President Yunji sends her congratulations and asks for a full report. She also says the Luna defense grid is being upgraded, just in case. Smart woman, Bo-Ram muttered. She had been thinking the same thing. By helping the Volani, humans had revealed their military capabilities to the entire galaxy. Some species would see that as a threat. The tactical display chimed. Hyunwoo checked his screens and paled. Admiral, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up massive movement in Devourer space. Bo-Ram looked at the display. Red. Markers were gathering at the edge of their sensor range. Hundreds of them. How many ships? At least 5,000. Maybe more. And Admiral, some of them are bigger than anything we saw before. Bo-Ram felt a chill. The humans had won at Korath Prime, but they had also gotten the machine's attention. The Devourers were coming back with everything they had. On the planet's surface, Colonel Minho was touring the areas his Marines had secured. The damage was extensive. Entire cities had been processed by the Devourer harvesting machines, leaving behind only empty foundations and metal scars. But in some areas, life had been saved. Minho watched as Volani civilians worked alongside human engineers to repair a hospital. The language barrier was huge, but somehow they were making it work. Lieutenant Seok Jin approached with a report. Sir, we've confirmed casualties from the ground operation. 340 Marines killed in action, 700 wounded. Minho nodded sadly. Every death hurt, but he knew it could have been much worse. What about civilian casualties? The Volani estimate we saved about 2 million people, maybe more. 2 million, Minho repeated. He thought about Private Dongwu, who had died protecting 20 children, 1 human life for 100,000 alien lives. The math was terrible, but the choice had been clear. In space, war correspondent. So Young was preparing her first broadcast of Federation media. Earth had given her permission to tell the galaxy what really happened at Korath Prime. Her small ship had recorded everything, the human fleet's arrival, the desperate battle, the aftermath. This is So Young of the Terran News Service, she began, speaking to cameras that would broadcast across Federation space. 3 days ago, the species you call Deathworlders came to this system, not to conquer, not to destroy, to answer a cry for help. She played footage of human fighters ramming Devourer ships, of Marines dropping onto a hostile planet, of Dongwu's final stand to protect alien children. You have called us monsters. You have called us savages. You have made it illegal to contact us. But when the Volani people faced extinction, who answered their call? The monsters, the savages, the Deathworlders. Her broadcast sparked debates across Federation space. Some species demanded military action against the humans. Others began to question whether they had been wrong about Earth. Back in the diplomatic meeting, the conversation had moved to practical matters. Thera was explaining the full scope of the Devourer threat. They have consumed 40% of our empire, she said. Hundreds of worlds, billions of people, and they're not slowing down. Our intelligence suggests they're building toward a final push against our core worlds. What's their ultimate goal? Asked Min Seo. Unknown. They don't communicate except to demand surrender. They convert all organic matter into raw materials. They treat living beings as resources to be harvested. Min Seo exchanged glances with Admiral Bo-Ram, who had joined the meeting. Admiral, what are your thoughts? Bo-Ram studied the galactic map Thera had provided. They're not just trying to destroy the Volani Empire. Look at their expansion pattern. They're cutting off trade routes, isolating Federation worlds. This isn't random. Destruction. It's strategy. Strategy for what? For taking over the galaxy, Bo-Ram said grimly. The Volani were just the first course. Kale looked up from his data pad. There's something else. We've detected Devourer scouts in other Federation territories. They're not just focused on us anymore. Since when? Since your fleet arrived, Kale said quietly. They started expanding their operations right after the battle at Korath Prime. The room fell silent. The implications were clear. By saving the Volani, humans had escalated. The war for everyone. I'm sorry, Thera said. We never meant for this to happen. We just wanted to save our people. Don't apologize, Boram said firmly. You did the right thing. The Devourers were always going to expand eventually. At least now we know what we're fighting. Min Seo leaned back in her chair. The question is, what do we do now? The Federation won't help. They're too afraid of us. The Devourers are bringing everything they have. We're on our own. No, Boram said. We're not alone. We have the Villani, and maybe other species will join us when they realize the machines are coming for them too. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. The Federation has been peaceful for 1,000 years. They've forgotten how to fight. But we haven't. And now they need us. In Federation space, the response to So Young's broadcast was immediate and divided. Progressive species called for contact with Earth. Conservative species demanded isolation protocols. Military leaders warned of human expansion. Scientists argued for cultural exchange. But in the outer territories where Devourer scouts had been spotted, a different conversation was taking place. Colonial governors and frontier settlements were quietly asking the same question. If the machines came for them, would the humans help? On Earth, President Yoonji was holding emergency sessions with world leaders. The implications of the Korith Prime battle were becoming clear. Humanity was now part of a galactic war, whether they wanted to be or not. The Villani have formally requested a mutual defense alliance, reported Foreign Minister Cho. They're offering to share their technology and provide bases for our fleet. And the Federation response? Asked Yoonji. Mixed. Some species are calling for sanctions against us. Others are requesting secret diplomatic channels. A few are asking if we'll help them if the Devourers attack. Yoonji looked at the reports. From Admiral Boram's fleet, the humans had won one battle against the machines, but the next fight would be much bigger. Send a message to Admiral Boram, she decided. Tell her Earth approves the Villani alliance, and tell her reinforcements are being prepared. How many ships? Yoonji thought about the alien children that human Marines had died protecting. She thought about the fear in the Villani call for help. She thought about the machines that turned living beings into raw materials. All of them, she said. Send every ship we have. In Villani space, Admiral Boram received Earth's message as her long-range sensors detected the approaching Devourer fleet. 5,000 enemy ships against the remnants of her battle group. But she also detected something else. Ships moving toward their position from Federation space. Not military vessels, but civilian ships. Freighters, passenger liners, research vessels, species fleeing the expanding Devourer threat. They're all coming here, reported Hyunwoo. Every ship that can make the jump is heading for Villani space. Why here? Because this is where the humans are, Hyunwoo said. They think we can protect them. Boram looked at the tactical display. Thousands of civilian ships converging on their position. A massive enemy fleet approaching, and somewhere behind them, Earth was sending everything it had. The galaxy's most peaceful species were looking to its most violent species for protection. The boss, the largest fleet in galactic history, emerged from the void like a metallic storm. 5,000 Devourer ships, some as large as space stations, moved toward Villani space with mechanical precision. At their center flew something that made even Admiral Boram pause, a moon-sized construct that registered as a single artificial intelligence. That's their command nexus, Dr. Min Seo said, studying the sensor readings. All Devourer operations are coordinated from there. Boram watched the approaching fleet on her tactical display. Her own forces had grown since Korith Prime. Earth had sent 200 more ships, and the Villani had scraped together everything they had left. But against 5,000 enemy vessels, it still felt hopeless. Any word from the Federation fleet? She asked. Commander Hyunwoo shook his head. They're maintaining defensive positions around their core worlds. The official message is that they're protecting Federation space from both the Devourers and us. Cowards, muttered Captain Taeho from his position at the fighter command station. They'd rather let the galaxy burn than trust us. Boram couldn't argue with that assessment. But she had more immediate concerns. Around their defensive position, thousands of civilian ships from across the galaxy had gathered, refugees who believed humans could protect them from the machines. Civilian evacuation status? She asked. 70% of the refugee ships have moved to the inner system, reported Tactical Officer Lieutenant Park. The rest are still arriving. We need more time, Boram said. Time we don't have, Taeho replied. Enemy fleet will be in weapons range in 6 hours. Boram made her decision. Signal Earth. Tell them we need to split our forces. Half the fleet protects the civilians. The other half goes after that command nexus. Admiral, Mincio said carefully, our analysis suggests attacking the nexus directly is suicide. It's protected by over 1,000 ships and has firepower equivalent to a planetary defense grid. Then we'll make it quick, Boram said grimly. Engineer Jun-Ho was already working on modifications to the human ships. If they were going to attack something the size of a moon, they needed bigger weapons. He had been experimenting with reactor overload techniques, turning the ships themselves into massive bombs. How many vessels can we convert? Asked his assistant Subin. All of them if we have to, Jun-Ho replied. But it's a one-way trip. No coming back from a reactor overload. Subin looked at the schematics. The crews would have to stay aboard until the last second to maintain targeting. I know, Jun-Ho said quietly. I've already put my name on the volunteer list. Captain Taeho was having similar conversations with his pilots. The plan called for fighter squadrons to penetrate the Nexus defenses and plant explosives in critical systems. None of the pilots were expected to return. This isn't a military operation, he told them. This is a sacrifice mission. Anyone who wants to transfer to civilian protection duty can do so without shame. Not a single pilot moved. Sir, said Jin-Woo, if we don't stop that thing, those civilians die anyway. At least this way we go down fighting. On the surface of Korath Prime, Colonel Minho was coordinating the defense of the refugee camps. Millions of beings from dozens of species had fled to Volani space, believing it was the safest place in the galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on him. The most dangerous place in the galaxy had become a sanctuary. Any word from Admiral Boram? Asked Lieutenant Seok Jin. She's taking half the fleet to attack the Devourer command ship, Minho replied. Win or lose, it'll be decided in space. And if they don't win? Minho checked his rifle and looked out at the camps filled with alien families. Then we hold the ground until there's nothing left to hold. War correspondent So Young was preparing. What might be her final broadcast? Her ship was part of the attack fleet, equipped with recording equipment to document humanity's last stand. This is So Young, reporting from the human fleet, she began. In 6 hours, we will engage the largest enemy force in galactic history. The odds are impossible. The outcome is uncertain. But the choice is clear. She gestured toward the refugee ships in the distance. Behind us are millions of civilians from across the galaxy. They came here because they believe humans will protect them. They're right. We will. Her broadcast was being transmitted live across Federation space, watched by billions of beings who had spent centuries fearing humanity. You have called us Deathworlders, monsters, savages. Today we prove what those words really mean. They mean we don't surrender. They mean we don't abandon those who trust us. They mean we fight until the last breath for what's right. The Devourer. Fleet continued its approach, their massive ships blotting out the stars. But something strange was happening in their formations. The artificial intelligences were running new calculations, analyzing data from the previous battle. In the command Nexus, the Prime Intelligence processed information with mechanical efficiency. The humans had displayed illogical behavior at Korath Prime. They had sacrificed valuable resources for no apparent gain. They had destroyed their own ships to achieve tactical objectives. This was not standard biological behavior. Most species fought to preserve themselves. Humans fought to preserve others, even at the cost of their own survival. The Prime Intelligence calculated new tactical parameters. Human forces would likely engage in suicide attacks. They would prioritize civilian protection over strategic objectives. They would make decisions based on emotional rather than logical factors. These variables made them unpredictable, and unpredictability was dangerous. Admiral Boram stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as the human fleet moved toward the enemy. 250 ships against 5,000. The math was terrible, but she had learned not to trust math. When humans were involved, all ships report ready, Commander Hyun-Woo announced. Signal the Volani fleet, Boram ordered. Tell them to focus on protecting the civilians. This is our fight now. Council Prime. Thera's voice came through the communication system. Admiral Boram, our ships will fight beside yours. You came to save us. We will not abandon you now. Boram smiled. Maybe the Volani were learning something from humanity after all. The battle began with long-range missile exchanges. Human weapons, designed for close combat, were outranged by Devourer energy beams, but the humans kept closing distance, taking casualties but never stopping. Captain Tejo led the first fighter wave directly into the enemy formation. His small craft weaved between massive Devourer ships, targeting their sensor arrays and communication systems. Behind him, dozens of human pilots followed, each one knowing they wouldn't return. "Target their coordination systems," he broadcast to his squadron. "Make them fight as individuals instead of a fleet." His plasma cannons cut through Devourer armor, but there were too many enemy ships. One by one, his fighters were destroyed by overwhelming firepower. Jin Wu's ship took a direct hit, but he managed to ram his damaged fighter into a Devourer cruiser's bridge section. The explosion took out both ships, but it created a gap in their formation. "All fighters exploit the breach," Tejo ordered, even as his own ship shuddered under enemy fire. Engineer Jun-ho watched the battle from the weapons control center of a heavy cruiser. His ship was loaded with enough explosives to crack a small moon, but they had to get close to the command nexus to use them. "Distance to target?" he asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing," Subin replied. "Enemy defenses are concentrated. Ahead." "Then we go through them," Jun-ho said. He activated the reactor overload sequence. "All hands abandon ship. I'll take her in manually." "Sir," Subin said, "the evacuation pods won't clear the blast radius in time." Jun-ho looked at his friend. "I know, but someone has to guide the ship to target." Subin sat back down at his station. "Then I'm staying too. You'll need help with the targeting systems." Around the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Human crews stayed at their posts as their ships became weapons. They flew directly into enemy formations, detonating their reactors at point-blank range. The Devourer fleet began to falter. Their logical battle algorithms couldn't account for enemies, who treated their own ships as ammunition. Every time they destroyed a human vessel, it exploded with enough force to damage nearby Devourer ships. War correspondent So Young continued broadcasting even as her ship came under attack. "The human fleet is breaking apart," she reported, "but they're taking the enemy with them. Every ship that dies takes down 3 or 4 Devourer vessels." Her ship shuddered as debris from a nearby explosion peppered the hull. "This is what courage looks like. This is what sacrifice means. This is why the galaxy called us monsters, because we're willing to become monsters to protect others." Captain Tejo's fighter was the last one left from his squadron. His weapons were empty, his engines damaged, but the command nexus was finally in range. He could see its massive bulk ahead, protected by the last line of Devourer ships. "All human vessels, this is Captain Tejo," he broadcast. "Target is in sight. Whatever happens next, remember why we're here." He pushed his damaged fighter to maximum speed, aiming for the Nexus's central processing core. Behind him, the surviving human ships followed, their crews ready to give everything for people they had never met. The final charge began, and the galaxy watched in awe as the monsters proved they were something else entirely. They were heroes. 3 months after the Battle of the Nexus, the galaxy was a different place. Admiral Hyun Woo stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Defense Headquarters, watching ships from 50 different species conduct joint training exercises. Human destroyers flew alongside Volani science vessels. Federation cruisers practiced formations with Earth battleships. It was a sight no one had imagined possible a year ago. The cost of victory had been terrible. Captain Tejo and Engineer Jun-ho were among the thousands who had died destroying the Devourer command nexus. Their sacrifice had won the war, but the galaxy would never forget what it had cost. "Admiral," came a voice behind him. He turned to see Dr. Min Seo, now wearing the uniform of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. "The ceremony is about to begin." They walked together through corridors filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Today marked the official formation of the Galactic Defense Alliance, a union born from the ashes of the old Federation's isolationist policies. In the main assembly hall, President Yoon-ji of Earth stood at a podium addressing the largest gathering of species in galactic history. Her words were translated into hundreds of languages, but her message was simple. 6 months ago, the galaxy knew humanity only as a rumor, she said. the dangerous Deathworlders who were too violent to contact. Today, we stand together as equals, united by the simple truth that some things are worth fighting for. She gestured to a wall where the names of the war's casualties were inscribed in letters of light. Human names stood alongside Vallani, Sethrak, and dozens of other species who had joined the final battles. Captain Taeho of Earth died protecting civilians he had never met. Engineer Junho sacrificed himself to save worlds he had never seen. Marine Private Dongwu gave his life for children who spoke a different language. They understood something that took the rest of us too long to learn. We are all connected. In the audience, Council Prime Thera of the Vallani listened with tears in her large eyes. Beside her sat Kyle, now her Minister of Interspecies Relations. The communication officer who had first called Earth was still amazed by what his desperate message had unleashed. "I never imagined," he whispered to Thera, "that calling the Deathworlders would save us all." "Not just save us," Thera replied. "They taught us how to save ourselves." At the back of the hall, Colonel Minho wore his dress uniform with quiet pride. The former Marine commander now headed the Alliance Military Academy, where beings from across the galaxy learned what humans called protective warfare, fighting not to conquer, but to defend. His students included young Vallani who wanted to be like the humans who had saved their world. Sethrak officers learning to think beyond traditional tactics. Even some former Federation military leaders who had realized that sometimes violence was the only way to protect peace. The Death World Doctrine, as historians were already calling it, was spreading throughout the galaxy. Not the idea that violence was good, but that those willing to fight for others could be trusted above all else. War correspondent So Young's final broadcast had become the most watched recording in galactic history. Her ship had been destroyed in the battle, but her message lived on. It played now on screens throughout the assembly hall, her voice steady even as explosions lit up the space around her. This is what courage looks like. This is what sacrifice means. This is why the galaxy called us monsters, because we're willing to become monsters to protect others. Her words had sparked a revolution in galactic thinking. Species that had avoided conflict for centuries were learning that sometimes the most peaceful thing you could do was fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. President Yunji continued her address. The Galactic Defense Alliance is not just a military organization. It is a promise that no world will face extinction alone, that no species will cry for help without answer, that the strong will protect the weak, regardless of the cost. She paused, looking out at the diverse audience. This promise is written in human blood and alien gratitude. It is sealed by shared sacrifice and common purpose, and it will endure as long as any of us draw breath. In the Strategic Planning Center, Admiral Boram reviewed reports from across the galaxy. The Devourer threat was ended, but new challenges were emerging. Pirate fleets taking advantage of post-war chaos. Rogue artificial intelligences attempting to fill the void left by the Devourers. Species trying to expand into territories abandoned during the war. "Ma'am," reported her aide, Lieutenant Commander Park, "we have requests for assistance from 12 different sectors. The Andromedans are dealing with automated defense systems left behind by the Devourers. The Spiral Arm colonies are reporting raids by unknown vessels, and there are reports of another machine intelligence building forces in the Outer Rim." Boram nodded. She had expected this. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long that many species had forgotten how to deal with conflict. Now they looked to the Alliance, and specifically to humans, for guidance, deployment recommendations. The Vallani have volunteered to handle the Andromedan situation. They've learned human engineering techniques and think they can disable the automated systems. The Sethrak want to investigate the unknown raiders. They're eager to prove themselves as Alliance members. And the Outer Rim situation? That one might require human involvement, Park said carefully. Early reports suggest the machine intelligence is specifically targeting former Devourer victims. It might be trying to finish what they started. Boram studied the galactic map. Red markers showed trouble spots scattered across known space. For the first time in galactic history, there was an organization capable of responding to all of them. "Signal Earth," she decided. "Tell them we need the 6th Fleet for the Outer Rim. And contact the Villani and Sethrak commands. If they want to handle their assignments, they have full Alliance support. In his laboratory, the former Federation scientist Dr. Vryn was working on a project that would have been impossible before the war. He was part of a joint research team, humans, Villani, Sethrak, and others, developing new technologies for galactic defense. The human plasma cannon design is remarkable, he told his research partner, Dr. Lee from Earth. Your people developed weapons more advanced than anything in Federation space. Dr. Lee smiled sadly. We had to. Earth gave us 1,000 different ways to die. We learned to fight back against all of them. And now you're teaching us to fight back too. Not just to fight, Dr. Lee corrected. To protect. There's a difference. Vryn nodded. He was beginning to understand that difference. Before the war, Federation species had avoided conflict entirely. Now they were learning that sometimes conflict was necessary, not for conquest or domination, but for protection and justice. In the memorial garden outside the headquarters, families of the war's casualties gathered daily. Humans and aliens stood together, sharing stories about the people they had lost. Language barriers meant little when grief was universal. Seo Jin, the sister of fallen Marine Lieutenant Seok Jin, often visited the garden with her young daughter. Today, they were joined by a Villani family whose children had been saved during the ground fighting on Korath Prime. Your brother died protecting our world, the Villani mother said through a translator. Our children live because of his sacrifice. Seo Jin nodded, tears in her eyes. He would have liked knowing that. He always said the best part of being human was helping others. The Villani children, now old enough to understand what had happened, placed flowers on the memorial marker. They had learned to speak basic Korean, wanting to honor the humans who had saved them in their own language. Thank you, the eldest child said carefully in Korean. Thank you for not letting us die. President Yoonji's address was reaching its conclusion. Today, we form an alliance not just of governments, but of peoples. Not just for defense, but for hope. The galaxy has learned that strength comes not from avoiding conflict, but from standing together when conflict finds us. She pressed a control, and holographic displays around the hall showed the new Alliance fleet. Hundreds of ships from dozens of worlds, all bearing the same symbol, a circle of stars around a single bright light. The light represents hope, Yoonji explained. The stars represent us all, different, distant, but part of the same sky. And the circle represents our promise, that we will never stand alone again. The audience rose as one, beings from across the galaxy applauding not just the alliance, but the idea behind it. That cooperation was stronger than isolation. That diversity was stronger than uniformity. That those willing to sacrifice for others could be trusted above all else. As the ceremony ended and delegates began to disperse, Admiral Hyunwoo received a priority message from long-range sensors. He read it twice before walking quickly to Admiral Boram's position. Ma'am, we have a situation developing in the Epsilon sector. Long-range probes are detecting massive energy signatures. Unknown origin, but the scale suggests a civilization-level event. Boram looked at the preliminary data. Whatever was happening in Epsilon sector was big enough to affect entire star systems. Could be natural, Hyunwoo continued. But the energy patterns suggest artificial origin. Another machine intelligence? Unknown. But if it's hostile and that powerful, it could threaten half the galaxy. Boram looked around the assembly hall,